Staffers, you guys know it. The right team will make you, the wrong team will break you. Payroll expense is your biggest expense on your income statement. And today we're going to talk about building powerful internal teams that are going to increase your efficiency and increase your profitability. And we are interviewing #1 best-selling author, Dr. Sabrina Starling, the author of How to Hire the Best, Contractors Edition. Let's get started. Good morning, staffers. I am so excited today. We are interviewing Dr. Sabrina Starling. She is the CEO of Tap the Potential, a profit-first company that specializes in helping small businesses really grow their business through profitability, through organizational design. And she's also the co-host of the podcast, Profit by Design. And also, I really want to give a shout out because she is she's a #1 best-selling author too of her brand new book, How to Hire the Best for Contractors. She actually has 2 books. This is the most recent one. And today we're going to be interviewing her about how to build a strong performing team. Because you guys know, strong performing teams means high profitability, right? When we put the right people in the right places, our profit shoots to the roof. So I am so excited. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sabrina Starling.
Thank you, Susanne. I am so excited to be here. I love talking about the intersection of profitability and hiring, because I think that payroll is typically the biggest expense in a business. And if we are not maximizing and tapping into the potential of our team members on that payroll, we're losing money left and right in our businesses.
Exactly. And for staffing firms, you know what? It is not just the biggest, and it's like using 90% of our expenses, really, payroll. Just because, we're putting people out in the field, we've got internal teams to support them. So efficiencies is extremely important, especially when it comes to the human resource area. Mm-hmm. So you are so right. Now, Dr. Sabrina, I love your background. You are a clinical psychologist by background. And this really adds a unique perspective for the staffing world in terms of like hiring and mindset and things like that. How did this even become a topic of interest for you?
Okay, so I used to work in a community mental health center, and I've had lots of jobs in my training to become a psychologist, and I got to experience a lot of different work environments. And I was really baffled by the fact that mental health professionals typically are the CEOs and on the leadership teams of these organizations, and many of them were terrible places to work. And I thought, if we as psychologists and mental health professionals cannot get this right, how can we expect the rest of the population in charge of hiring and recruiting to get this right with putting the right people on the team that matches the culture and get the team going and doing what they need to do? So when I left my job as a psychologist because I got burnt out, I decided I'm going to go into coaching because I'm going to look for a new way to repurpose my skills. And I learned life coaching and got trained in that. And then I hung out my shingle as a life coach in Wyoming, of all places, in the early 2000s, coaching virtually unheard of. I was a little crazy. I like to call it a risk taker, but crazy is really the actual phrase. And the first clients that I attracted were small business owners. And because of my background in psychology, they really wanted to talk to me about how I could, and they didn't care about hiring. They really had the belief that we're a small town and we're in a small business in a rural area. We can't get good employees. We have to just make do with what we have. So, Sabrina, can you help us take our kind of warm body employees and really coach them up and make them into A players? And I like a challenge, and I'm a psychologist. And so I started digging in, and I thought, let's see how we can help them coach their employees to be more productive. That went nowhere. And I want to let everyone off the hook right now. If you have warm body team members on your team and you're beating yourself up because somehow you should know how to coach them and get better production out of them and get them to be a team player, if there was something you could do differently, it would just snap and work. That is not the case. And sometimes it's a matter of somebody's in the wrong seat in the business, and we've got to align them with their strengths, but sometimes they're just not a good fit and we have to let them go. And you and I will get into that, I think, in a little bit more later in the interview. But I really, one morning I just woke up with this thought of, what if it's not true? And I was really starting to question this belief that we have to just make do because we're in a small town in a rural area. And this idea that we can't get A players on our team, what if that's not true? And as I started questioning that, that actually put me on a quest to go find small business owners in smaller towns and rural areas who have A players on their team, even if they don't have a team full of them, maybe they just have one. I wanted to find out how they got that one A player on the team. And as I did those interviews, and I tell you, Susanne, it was very, very hard to get them to talk to me, because even if they had one A player or 10, they all said the same thing. And that is, I have no idea how I got this person or these people on my team. It was luck. And Dr. Sabrina, please, if you go out there and you find an answer, would you please come back and tell me? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And that made me so aware that there are no hiring and recruiting systems out there for small business. That is a huge gap in the field. So I am a huge fan of Jeff Smart's work and Brad Smart, top grading in the book Who. That is great, and it's written for a corporate environment. And when you're recruiting in a smaller business and you don't have an entire HR team, you have a business owner or you have an HR professional, and you're kind of it in the business, those strategies that are taught in those books are too cumbersome to do in a smaller setting. And so I started taking what the small business owners are doing that's working, and I developed the How to Hire the Best system from that.
Thank you. And what you say is exactly it. I mean, I grew up in a small business. My dad had a small business accounting firm for almost 40 years now. And, and I grew up in that belief that, you could just hire anybody and you could train them. And if you couldn't train them, there was something wrong with you. And literally, and that was the mindset. And that's a lot of mindset with a lot of entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah.
But, before we go into it, I think it's really important to find exactly, what is an A player? Like why is it so important to hire A players when a lot of us are coming from that mentality that, we grow up in an environment, we go to school and we're taught literally you can do anything in the world. You just have to work hard and you can do anything. There's nothing holding you back. And so as employers, we're not psychologists. So we hire people and we say, okay, you can have the world. I can teach you. And we go, why this is not working. And you bring up a really good point that it's hiring A players. Tell me, what is an A player and do they exist? And exactly why is it so important to hire A player? Why can't I hire anybody and just train them and do what they need to do?
Right. So there's a broad definition of an A player is someone who is, like you described, highly motivated, go-getter, good problem solvers. When they encounter a problem, they try to find a way around, through, and over. They don't just throw up their hands and say, oh, I'll wait till Susanne gets back and she'll tell me what to do. They keep working on things and do their best. So that's a broad definition of A players. But there's psychologically, we need to understand the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation means I personally am motivated to do a good job. I'm not looking for a carrot to motivate me. I don't need a raise to work harder. I just work harder because it's what's needed, and I derive personal satisfaction from the results and the impact of that work. It is personally gratifying to me. And in fact, if you dangle money in front of me and say, Sabrina, if you write your book a month earlier, we'll give you a bonus. That could actually take away some of my motivation. So we have to be careful with that with intrinsically motivated people, and A players are intrinsically motivated. Extrinsic motivation is, you know what, it's tit for tat, Susanne. If you want me to work an hour later, you're gonna have to pay me overtime, time and a half. Otherwise, I'm checking out at 4:30, not even 5 o'clock. I'm out of here. And that's extrinsic. A players are intrinsically motivated. The other thing that A players have that makes them different is a growth-oriented mindset versus fixed mindset. So growth-oriented mindset is I can keep learning and get better and better. I have not tapped out my potential. There is more for me to learn and grow. Fixed mindset is I kind of know what I kind of know. Yeah, I'll do that training, but it's not going to make that much difference. I'm not going to get that much better. And fixed mindset also is a mindset of cover the mistakes. Don't let them see that you don't know. Don't let on. Just kind of make it look like you know what you're doing, which, as we all know, when you have a team member who does that in the workplace, it causes all kinds of problems because they're just putting on a facade. And then there's all sorts of stuff that they're getting wrong. And when they leave or they take a day off, you kind of see, oh my gosh, I had no idea they weren't doing anything. And, the problems just kind of evolve from there. So the other part of your question was, can we find A players? How are they out there? We need to understand that A players comprise about 10% of the population of people who are actively looking for work. And this is, well, let me back up. I don't want to say to people who are actively looking for work. They comprise 10% of the population. The challenge is that most A players are not actively looking for work. They're employed elsewhere, right? Because they're A players. The people who are actively looking for work may or may not be A players. It's kind of a hodgepodge. So we have to be careful about that. And it changes how we recruit A players. We need to use different, more effective recruiting strategies that tap into the psychology of A players, which is what I teach in my How to Hire the Best books and course. So 10% of the population is A players. Not all of those individuals are employable. Many of them work elsewhere. Many of them have a physical or other emotional limitation that would keep them from being appropriate to work in your workplace. They may be in high school or elementary school. They may be retired. So now the pool of A players is getting smaller and smaller. And so we have to be very strategic about how we go about recruiting them. And just because someone is an A player does not mean they will be an A player in your business. So we want to have a good cultural fit to make sure they're an A player and an A player in your business.
I love that. Dr. Sabrina, you're an entrepreneur and staffers. I know a lot of you guys own your own staffing firms too. And I know one of the biggest things, and this really helped me by reading Dr. Sabrina's book, was, I just didn't understand how all of us didn't think the same way. I mean, like, if I am motivated to always grow myself and just keep investing in my knowledge and making sure that I'm not the same person today that I'm going to be in 10 years from now, I thought everybody else was the same way too. And when I would get these employees, I'm sure you guys relate too, and I was like, okay, you don't want to like take extra classes, you don't want to invest in yourself, you don't want to like just exceed the expectations. It would just mind boggle me. And I would think to myself, what am I doing to like to make this person not successful, that they want to grow more? And your book just brought so much clarity that, you know what, there are different types of people. There are people like you said, that are internally motivated, that will rise just because that is just them. And then there are people that are, just, hey, like you said, they're in it for what they get. So I thank you for just bringing out that honesty in your book, because so many people don't address that basic issue.
Yeah.
And most of us see the world as we see the world, right? And we think that everybody else would see, because we've never sat in someone else's eyes before. So we don't have their life experience.
And you're bringing up such a good point that we all have different personalities. All of us who are A players have different personalities. So you can have a team of A players with different personalities, and understanding that they're going to see the world differently, communicate differently. And so it's not just about getting them on the team and getting the right people, but it's also learning how to communicate effectively as a team of A players to get the result that you're looking for.
Exactly. So you did scare me. You said there's only 10% of the world that's A players, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those aren't even available, right? Because of different things, like they're 12 years old, or they're, they're not able to work for different reasons. They don't live in our small towns, like you said, like Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of our staffing entrepreneurs, we're located all across the United States. So some of us are in big cities that are hustling and bustling, and there's plenty to choose from. And some of us are in really small towns. Now, the traditional way that we hire, right, is we put an ad, right? We put an ad in Indeed, and we like hope, we scrub through all these thousands of resumes, and hope sometimes we'll test them to like just see if they meet the basic ones, just to somehow weed out these people.
Yeah.
Tell me, why are we failing to hire A players? Why is it so hard? What's going wrong in our recruiting processes?
So we are getting desperate, and we realize we need to hire somebody. So we put together a quick job ad, and we talk about ourselves. a little too much in those job ads, and we don't step back and define the culture and who's going to be a good fit. So I know a lot of your staffers know about marketing and how to market their companies. All of those things that we do to market our companies are strategies that we need to apply on the recruiting side. So when you're marketing, you identify an ideal client profile, an avatar, and your marketing message goes to that avatar. And you do a lot to study that avatar to understand their psychology. Do we do this when we hire? No. We say, I need this. This is what it's like to work here. Here's how much we're going to pay you. And these are the skills you're going to need to have. And here you go. Here's the job ad. So we need to step back from that, and we need to look at who is our ideal employee and define that avatar. And I love talking to the A players that currently exist on my clients' teams to develop that A player avatar, ideal employee profile for the business. And each role in the business will have a little different avatar because you're looking for certain personality strengths. But before we even get to the personality strengths, we need to define the culture of the company. And that piece gets left out entirely too much, or it's given broad brushstrokes, like we're a family-oriented environment. Well, what does that mean? Your family may be very different than my family. Do you really want to be saying we're a family-oriented environment if your family is a dysfunctional family? No. So let's get really clear and break that out even on what it means. But the place to start with identifying culture is looking at our immutable laws. And it's not the immutable laws of all the team players. This is not a team brainstorming activity. This starts with the owner of the company, because the owner drives the company culture. That's where the seeds of the culture can be found. And it's the owner's immutable laws, the owner's core values. And what I mean by core value is that we all hold about 3 to 5 core values that are so much a part of who we are. We just assume the rest of the world operates that way, Susanne, just like what you mentioned earlier. You know, how on earth could there be people who don't care about their job? I care so much. How could they not care? So our core values show up when we feel really proud of something that's happened in the business or our personal life. Whatever happened speaks to a core value, so we want to try to identify that. And on the flip side of that, whenever we are angry, frustrated, ticked off, an immutable law or a core value has been violated. So we want to identify what the core value is that's underneath that. So an example at Tap the Potential is we have a core value or an immutable law around we serve the heck out of our clients. They can count on us. We do what we say we're going to do. You want to aggravate Dr. Sabrina really bad? Tell a client you're going to do something and don't do it. That will keep me awake at night because that's an immutable law. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm a woman of my word. That's how we translate it into our family's immutable laws. We are women of our word in our household. So that is an immutable law. And so you want to be hiring people who hold very similar immutable laws, that their word is very important to them. If you hire somebody who's a yes man or a yes woman who just says, yes, I'll do that, yes, I'll do that, and they don't do those things, they're violating that immutable law. They're not going to be a good fit. So we identify what these immutable laws are, and we use that in our recruiting process. And that's our very first filter, and I really believe it's much more effective to filter people out than to cast a wide net and then have to narrow it down. Who has time for that? You as staffers don't have time for that, and the people that you're hiring and recruiting for, they don't have time for that. So filter out as many people as you can with those immutable laws, and then move to the personality characteristics that are needed to do the job exceptionally well, day in and day out. This is key. So we need to know for each role that we're recruiting for what the one result is that we're looking for. If that person in that role can't get anything else done in a given day or a given week, what is it that we most need them to do? And then what personality strengths set them up to do that job exceptionally well, day in and day out? And do we have time for me to give an example?
Yeah, sure. Please
Okay.
do.
So a while back, I was coaching a young man, and he had a food product that he was selling at a kiosk in the mall. And his business was growing. At first, it was just him. He made it, he sold it. He made it, he sold it. And then he said, you know what? I'm growing so much, I don't have time to do this anymore. I need somebody who can stand at the front of the kiosk while I make the product in the back. And they need to be bringing in traffic that passes by. And he hired his college friends. And they would do really well. But then after about an hour on the job, they would actually turn their back and start looking at their phone. And people, the traffic would be passing by. And he was coming to me. He's like, what do I do? How do I motivate them? How do I keep them doing what I need them to do? And I asked him, I said, I'm curious about something. Are your friends introverts perhaps? And he said, well, I'm not sure. What's an introvert? And I said, we introverts are really good at being extroverted and engaging for a very short period of time. And then we have to have quiet time, alone time, and that's how we recharge our batteries. And so I know myself as an introvert, I can do this for about an hour. Then I got to recharge the batteries. And so I said, I wonder if that's what's going on with your college friends. And he said, you know what? I think you're right. Because I notice when we go to parties, they kind of hang out off in the corner by themselves and they're in their own little group. And meanwhile, I'm talking to everybody and moving around. And I said, okay, that's it. Just focus your recruiting on hiring extroverts. And I said, start looking around at your circle of friends and college classes, who's extroverted, and ask them if they want a job. That's all it took.
I love that. I love, and that's, and I think that's one of the things that we do as business owners, especially when we're starting off, we hire the people we know, right? Because they're accessible, and we think, I was guilty of it. Anybody will do. Any warm body you breathe, you will do, we can train. But you're right. There's just certain factors that to really perform well in certain positions, you have to be able to have certain personal qualities, right? And if you're picking a introvert to do a sales job where you're required to like pull people out and be in a mall kiosk, and you're picking introverts, you're really setting them up for failure. Not only your business up for failure, but that person up for failure, because that's just not who they are internally. That's just not going to light their fire. That's just not going to be their jam every single day, right? No. So that is so key in what you just said. And I love that thought. I mean, that to me, that is like a fluke of genius, define your immutable laws, define what's important to you before you even begin. I mean, how many times do we as recruiters or as entrepreneurs actually sit down and first of all, write down our values, because you have to get some pretty deep mental stuff in order to do that, to even figure out that that's important. Yeah. But the importance of defining your values and finding people that are actually going to be aligned with your values. Because you're right. When you hire people that are not in line with your values, you are going to immediately have stress, right? Because everything they do is going to be like just driving you crazy, because foundationally, ethically, it's just not the right thing to do, right? Right. And I think you even bring out a really good point, because as recruiters, right? As recruiters, we have the ability to help our clients really shape from the beginning what's important to them, right? And really be able to address the ads to attract that person. So one of the things that I really loved in your book, Dr. Sabrina, was you talked about being forthright in your ad, telling the applicant exactly what they're getting into. Yeah. And a lot of us, like you said, we want to put our best foot out there, right? We want to say we're family focused, we have benefits, we offer high pay. Scaring someone, putting the truth, is kind of directional of how we do things, right? Yes. So tell me, what does that look like, actually being truthful and descriptive in the ad, of actually outlining things as they really are?
Let me talk about the psychology of doing this first, and why this works so well and is so important. And a lot of recruiters and business owners totally overlook this in their ads. So what you're talking about is the process of inoculating your candidates. And it's just like when we get a flu shot, we get a little dose of the flu strain and our body builds up resistance and immunity to the flu. And this is what we want our candidates to have as they're coming in the door. We want to be brutally honest with them about here's what it's really like to do this job day in and day out. There's some great things and there's some things that are challenging. Are you willing to endure these challenging situations? I remember an interview that I did on the Profit by Design podcast a while back with Jeff McManus of Ole Miss University, and he has the Landscape Services Department. That department was really struggling to recruit and hire. And one of the things they do is they inoculate, and they tell their candidates, you know, when you're having to clean up the landscape at Ole Miss, you have this is a beautiful campus and it's looking immaculate. And then on Friday night or Saturday, there's a football game. And imagine all these people coming to your home and trashing your beautiful yard that you've worked so hard on. And you have, you know, just a few hours the next day to get it all cleaned up. Are you going to be okay with that? Because that's what life is in the landscape department at Ole Miss. And so he also went on to say, and you're going to be here in the hot summer when it's 100 degrees and humid, and you're having to pick up dead animals that have been hit on the road. They kind of smell. You're going to be okay with that. That's inoculating the candidates. When people say, yes, I will do that, because at that point they want the job, right? They are sealing their commitment to you so that when they find themselves in that situation, they are a lot less likely to up and quit.
That is interesting. So you're saying by having an applicant know what's out there, know what the everyday reality is going to be, and having them think through that and still know that they want to do that you're going to get a stronger employee if they agree to do it.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Much stronger. And they're going to stay with you longer. And that's really when we have the turnover on our payroll, that's where we're losing the profitability in these companies. So the longer we can keep people, and if we set them up to be retained from the get-go, we are building our profitability.
That is amazing. So what about those candidates that ask you, how much am I going to get paid from the start? They're obviously, I'm just curious, as a business psychologist, what is your thoughts on that?
All right, so everybody needs to know what they're going to get paid. I mean, come on, if you want to hire me, Susanne, I want to know what's the offer here. And so the key, though, is for many business owners, and probably many of your staffers too, it is a challenge to pay top wages or top salaries. So what I like to do is to tell candidates as they're coming in, look, we're going to pay you in this range, and that range needs to be around the 65th percentile for that area, for that role. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics provides wonderful data for that. And you can share that data and say, this is, you know, the 65th percentile. That means that it's more than what most people make, but it's not the top pay. But if you come in and you hit this criteria at this date and this criteria at this date, then we bump your pay. And we move you on up to the 90th percentile, which is the top wage. And that would happen over about probably a 2-year period of time. But that hinges on them showing you that they are hitting the results that you need them to hit. Define those results based on what you need them to do for your company to be profitable. So all of that is thought through before you're even in that conversation. And now my ninja strategy on this, and I hate to share this, but I'm going to, because if everybody starts doing it, it's not going to be quite as unique. And I understand this might be going out to the American Staffing Association. So a lot of people might be doing this going forward. You document on a piece of paper for the candidate what the criteria are that they need to hit and what time frames they need to hit those criteria to advance in the company. Because here's the deal. Every company out there offers opportunities for advancement. That's airy-fairy, vague. No candidate knows what that means. It's pie in the sky. They may or may not advance. And they don't even know what they have to do to advance. If you document it and you put it in front of them on a piece of paper and you let them leave with it, now you are standing out against every other opportunity they are considering. The other thing that you want to do on the back side of that piece of paper is have endorsements from your current A players who are tickled pink working for you and why they like working for your company and what makes you unique. And if you have pictures of you guys having fun and doing wonderful things, include those pictures. And that's one sheet, hand it to the candidate. That sets you up to be considerably different from every other opportunity that A player is going to be considering.
I love it. So you're saying like in the interview stages, show them the milestones, show them that this is what it takes to advance in the company and just be forthright with that then so they can see that their results are measurable.
Yes. Yeah. And this is what we get feedback from our clients that Tap the Potential when they do this. Their candidates tell them, this is why I took this job. You guys are totally different. Your culture is right on. And I knew exactly what I was getting into. You didn't pull any punches. You told me what I was getting. And that's why I'm here.
I love it. I love that. That is so amazing. So tell me, when I do an interview, just like I'm sure many of the staffers do to interview their clients, everybody looks the same. They come in with a smile. They wear the same black suit if they're wearing a suit. Their resumes look like they've been written through a software. How do you recognize that this person is really, really an A player?
Yeah. So like I said before, filter, filter, filter from the beginning. So the best way to recognize an A player is to do an extended interview with them, because all of us can put up a front for an hour, but not for a day or 2 days on the job. But that takes time. So you can't afford the time to do that with 10 candidates or 20 candidates. You really want to only be doing that with your top 3. And so before they get to you, you want to have what we call, Jeff Smart created this. It's a threat of a reference check. And it's at the beginning of their application, and they're signing off on a statement that says, I understand if I am offered this opportunity, then I will provide references of your choosing. And essentially, and that's not the exact wording. He has the exact wording in his book, Top Grading. But it's to that effect. So that essentially is getting you around the typical reference check where the candidate gives you 3 references, you call and you check those references and you get the standard, yes, I can verify that they worked here between those dates. No, I can't tell you anything else about them. What good does that do? And so when you use that threat of a reference check, first off, the candidate is responsible for arranging the interviews of your choosing. So if they're in the interview with you and they're telling you about outstanding results that they got on a project on a team that they worked on 2 years ago, listen for who else is on that team who could verify that story and say, I want to talk to one of your coworkers who was on that team with you. Would you set up an interview for me to talk to them? 10 minutes. I just want to talk to them. A players will do that and they'll do it within a day. B and C players, you may or may not get those, but that screens people out right away. So we put all these screening measures, and that's just one screening measure that we put in, so that by the time we get to the actual interview with someone, we can have the time it takes to really suss out if their immutable laws are a good fit. And I always say we don't have a lot of time to interview. So if somebody shows you a violation of an immutable law, stop the interview. Yes, you have to have a consistent interview process. Everyone has to go through the same process, but not everybody has to have every question in that interview. If there's a stopping point and if you either pass or fail to go on, stop the interview. And that is the first violation of immutable laws that you hear. Just stop, you're done. And one of my favorite questions to really pull out if somebody's going to be a good candidate for you is to have your A players on your team talk to you about a recent day on the job that was a really bad day where the SHIT hit the fan and use that as an example in the interview and describe the situation to your candidate and say, I know you know nothing about our policies and procedures and how we do things around here, but if you were in this scenario, talk me through how you would handle this. And what you're going to do is you're going to get an insight into their immutable laws right there.
Wow, that's pretty deep. And then especially like having them, verify their not just the employment references, but the people that can verify their stories too. I think that's deep because that's going to call a lot of things out and really makes them very truthful, right? About their real accomplishments.
Yeah.
So that is really, really good. Thank you, Dr. Sabrina, on that one.
You're welcome.
I know I know our time is running out, but there's 2 questions that I would love to ask you. One is, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We're going to hire the wrong person, someone that passed all of the tests, came in the black suit, had all the references, and maybe something going on in their life or whatever reason, it's not going to work out. What do we do as employers? What do we do in terms of drawing the line and being able to do the best thing for our businesses?
So before you even get into the hiring process, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to identify the milestones in their performance and training that you need them to hit in the first year with you. So what is an A player doing at the end of year one that says to you, wow, they are a rock star? And then back that out to 6 months, 3 months, 1 month in, the first week, and the first day, so that you have this criteria in front of you as you bring them on board, and you can measure their performance from day one as to how well they are hitting that criteria. And so if you see at day one, they're hitting about 80%, and you think, oh, 80%, maybe my criteria is just a little too high. So let's look and see how they're doing at week one. And by week one, they are now at 75%. And you're like, yeah, this isn't so good. And then you go to 2 weeks and you look at, oh, they're still like 75, 85%, and I'm pulling out all the stops. Let them go. Let them go, and let yourself go. And I know it's hard to acknowledge you made a mistake, but it's so much more costly to keep them on board and keep trying. It's much better to go back to the drawing board. It is better to hire right and let go if you haven't, than to try and keep working and keep working. Because as I said before, it's not just about us and what we do to train them. They have to be bringing the right stuff in to the business.
Staffers, you heard it from the business psychologist. Sometimes it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and you just have to let go. And I know as an employer, that's sometimes so hard to do because there's loyalty. There's what my other teammates think about this. You know, there's that failure, that sense of failure on your part too. But like you said, Dr. Sabrina, you just got to let go, and you got to let go, because I love in the book, you actually talk about statistics of the cost of hiring a bad employee and the actual dollars. And these are not like small dollars. These are like multiples of their salary that a company has let walk through their door by keeping a bad employee.
Yeah.
And so staffers, you know, turnover is not necessarily a bad thing. It's going to happen. And let's embrace it. Let's embrace it to build wonderful, strong, high-performing teams.
Yes, lean and mighty is the way to go. And if you have to get by with a lean and mighty team while you're waiting for the right person, the rest of your A players will really appreciate it, and they usually pull together.
Exactly. And Dr. Sabrina, I love how in your book you even talk about the first rule of advice is don't hire if you don't have to. Look for
Right.
automation, look for efficiencies, don't hire if you don't have to. And I was quite surprised. I mean, this is the business psychologist, this is the employee mastermind. And
Yeah.
she was saying that.
Well, and my reason for saying that, Suzanne, is that any level of complexity that we bring into our business eats away at our profitability and the sustainability of the business. People are the most complex. That's the highest level of complexity that you can introduce in your business. So lean and mighty teams are the way to go.
That is awesome. And then one more final question, and I always ask this, if there was one piece of advice, because as staffing entrepreneurs, we don't have not only the ability to influence our own businesses by putting the right people in the right places to be extremely efficient, but we also build the teams of our clients. Dr. Sabrina, what is the number one piece of advice that you would leave us with today?
Get your clients in the mindset of becoming an employer of choice, so that the A players they want to attract seek them out, and they are known everywhere as an employer of choice for this particular type of team member.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Sabrina. This was amazing. Thank you for this gift for myself and the viewers. And you guys heard it. You guys heard it from the business psychologist, Dr. Sabrina Starling. And I'm going to put the link to her book. It's the #1 bestseller, How to Hire the Best for Contractors. It is a must read. And definitely it's a life changer. And it's for those of us who are employers who are really responsible for building strong teams for not only ourselves, but our clients. It's a must read. You have got to do it. And I will put her information in. I wish we had time to talk about the 4-week vacation. Dr. Sabrina helps entrepreneurs build their businesses so they can take a 4-week vacation. Can you imagine taking a 4-week vacation from your business and like not even checking email? Well, she is the master at designing businesses to do that for you. So I'm going to have her information and our link, and so you guys can reach out to her. Thank you, Dr. Sabrina Starling, for being on our show today.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I am happy to entertain any questions or conversations if you want to reach out to me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.